More outrage over the power outages. Elected officials ramping up the threats and residents out of patience. We will go look around the region and fill you in on what's going on and what isn't. Then the jury in the Prococa corruption trial still has not made a decision. We'll head down to the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan for the very latest and what may or may not happen next. Also, Dennis Rodman, I'm serious now, he wasn't able to negotiate peace between the U.S. and North Korea, but somehow, some way, we're at a point in time where Donald Trump will give it a try. He's set to meet with Kim Jong-un in this May here. This is going to get, as they say, very interesting. Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. A little bit of everything in the next 60 minutes. The first nor'easter struck 1 week ago. The second one just 2 days ago. And tens of thousands of people in our area still without power. Some of them, they've been in the dark since the first storm. But there have been some positive developments. We have seen thousands of homes throughout the entire region get power back on. Let's take a look at some of the numbers right now. New Jersey, they're in the worst shape here. More than 93,000 homes still without power. About a quarter of those, they're in Morris County. About 25,000 homes in the Hudson Valley, they're in the dark. 3 times that many people were without power just yesterday. And then we go to Long Island, which of our regions probably the most spared. Fewer than 2,000 people were without service, and those floods have receded. Now, politicians, they are looking for answers about why it has taken so long, and still for so many, still even longer, and why the power companies were not better prepared. We did see this storm coming. Andrew Cuomo, he's threatening to revoke Con Ed's license due to its poor response. Governor says they don't have a lifetime franchise and another company could be brought in if warranted. He's also ordered an investigation of all the utilities and their responses. Now, the county of Westchester, they've been hit particularly hard. County Executive George Latimer, well, he held a town hall at the county center in White Plains today, and he made it clear that he's calling for the heads of the power companies to step down. Take a listen.
I want to see change in the corporate boardroom because there was failure on the streets of this county, and someone's going to be accountable for it. And when the individuals are accountable for it, the new action team has to come in and put in place a workable plan. That plan has to be negotiated with the local governments and the first responders. It has to be a plan that will change this reality.
Now, residents, they also had a chance to share their stories, and some of them understandably emotional.
We've been without power since Friday morning. I have 2 disabled children, and they never should have been in this situation. It's so hard to come home to a cold house and have to bring them with me.
Well, across the river in Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy, who, like the county executive, also joined us early in the week, he's also mad, and he's also calling for an investigation into the power companies. Files, they've been traveling around the region speaking to residents, and we caught up with this man from Jersey who hasn't had power since the first storm, but he's still trying to make the best of it.
My wife stayed home all day Friday with 4 kids. My sister-in-law's with us, her daughter. I got a dog, a lizard, 2 cats, and they just roughed it. I had the fireplace going, but by Saturday morning, my wife's like, I'm out of here, that's enough.
I think they speak for many people, that sentiment. Congressman Josh Gottheimer, a Democrat who represents North Jersey, he's touring his district, and he's also ticked off with the power companies.
It's a disaster, right? They've made a disaster, they've made this worse instead of making it better for people. This has been sitting here for a week. It's been a week. Got 10,000 people still who've had no power here for a week.
Now, his constituents, they're happy he's there. This woman says the power company has been zero help.
It's nice to know that we have people in our corner and that we're not completely forgotten, because it feels like JCP now is just like, hey, you'll be fine. Not really, dude.
Now, for the past few days here, we have been giving you, the viewers, a chance to vent a few of the angry tweets. And trust me, I'd spend more than an hour reading some of the ones, and a lot of them not fit to print or let alone put on TV. Let's see what David says here. Con Ed, you suck, you lie, you mislead us, and you cannot handle this problem. What use it is for us to DM you to get false information? You're a joke of a company, and the people that run it ought to be fired. You have no excuses. We want answers. Tell me how you really feel. Next up here, my new estimate to have power, Nick says, restored is Friday night. But since you've changed the estimate every day since Sunday, Con Ed, you got zero credibility with me. And Megan tweets, Con Edison, our restoration date keeps changing and getting pushed back. How do I know what to believe? Well, our friends at the Journal News, they've been all over this story. And for more, in fact, I want you to take a look at the front page here, which really said it all this week. Ridiculous. 6 years after Sandy, Con Ed woefully unprepared for the storm. And joining us now, George Fitzgibbon, investigative reporter at the Journal News. Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent, is also with me as well. And listen, it's the easiest thing after a storm. You go after the utility company. But I will tell you, Con Ed made it easy in that their communication about this, their lack of transparency, or even their lack of just, forget about shooting straight with the people. I was at an event at Pace Law School today where I had a former assistant U.S. attorney and an assembly person. And they both were told by Con Ed they had power. They call somebody on a cell phone at their home. There's no power at the house. And this has happened 3 times to them. The point is, they keep giving a false bill of goods. And George, you remember from 6 years ago, this wasn't supposed to happen again after Sandy. How did we get here?
Well, here's the thing, and this is one of the things, Richard, that we have looked at. What happened after Sandy, as everybody recalls, there was a lot of what we're seeing now was happening then. And the PSC, the Public Service Commission, also got involved. There was a Moreland Commission convened, and they did a final report. And yet here we are again. And the bottom line is, one of the things that we've kind of drawn to, and we're doing this week and in our follow-up story, is to ask why and how. So, and the first part of that is understanding the system, right? Essentially the mutual aid system, which is for, as we all know, basically local utility companies, they need manpower. So
they set up the flare and the cavalry comes from everywhere, including north of the border. Yep.
Right. Now here's the problem. New York is part of what they call the North Atlantic Mutual Assistance Group. There's 7 of these groups throughout the country.
Yep.
We belong to this one. We're also in Region 2 of the 10 mutual aid regions throughout the country. So it's an organized system. But it's entirely controlled by the utility companies. So the Public Service Commission and public service commissions throughout the country and other states, they have to approve the agreement. But when the time comes, it's the utility company that makes the call.
But Andrew went through a report and shared with our audience last night that Moreland made a point that these guys, Con Ed and others, were far too reliant on this mutual aid system.
Right.
And that the next time, and they said they spent $1 billion, that they were going to be ready and be more self-sufficient so that they wouldn't have to say, you know, everybody was so overstrapped they couldn't help. And surprisingly to me, at least, George, when pressed if Con Ed had enough resources, I figured they'd say, hey, well, they took a lot of our guys to Puerto Rico. They haven't been able to come back yet. Or, you know what, they've been pulled in other directions. They said they had enough men and material.
They've said that from the beginning.
Right. And so my point is, if they have it, that only leaves one option, which is incompetence.
Well, the thing is, but you know, by the way, the other thing that came out of Sandy is everybody called for more communication between the utilities and local government. And I think you heard George Latimer, the county executive, the other day say, they haven't called us. They haven't said, you know, we have 2 trucks, where do you need them? I think this was the press conference in Yorktown. So that part did not happen. So what you're looking at now, the Public Service Commission, they basically oversee parts of it, but if you're a utility company, and we do not know the numbers at this point of who's out there when exactly, but if you're a company and you're a company that relies on profit, you basically put the call out for how many workers initially. Do you go the full 1,700 or whatever it is up front, or is the tendency for the utility company to start small, and then as you need them, bring them in, which is what we're hearing now, that they were slow in bringing in some of these mutual aid workers.
With due respect to them, though, this isn't Monday morning quarterbacking or Friday morning or evening quarterbacking. This storm was projected.
Both were.
3 to 4 days. I'm even talking the last one. I'm talking the first nor'easter, which, you know, then you can say is a cascading problem. The second one, they knew that it was going to be big. Now, sure, guys can be wrong. But for a company who netted $500 million just in the fourth quarter last year, I don't want to hear poverty. I'm sorry here.
Well, that's, again, that is where a lot of the focus is coming. That's what people are going to be asking now. But what happens when you wait to call in these mutual aid workers? other utility companies in the region are looking for them too. So you go beyond. We have crews here from Quebec,
Yep.
from Wisconsin. I think we ran into a crew from Florida today. So it takes a while. And now, how do these crews get here? They're driving because they need their equipment.
Yep.
So expediency and like doing this quickly is really what has to happen. And when you leave it to the companies themselves to make that call, I think that's when you see some of this, sort of falling apart.
And there's a little bit of, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me coming in all of this, because clearly if left to their own devices, I think we've learned that Con Ed's not going to do it. They're not going to improve the communication. They're not going to decrease the reliance on mutual aid, or they would have done it already after the Public Service Commission and after the Moreland Commission report came out. But my question, what I'm starting to focus on is the Public Service Commission. They regulate and they approve rate hikes from Con Edison, but I get the sense that they haven't done much to make sure that Con Ed was living up to the changes that were mandated or at least suggested after Moreland, to make sure that they got ahead of these things.
It would appear that that is the case. And the thing is, so what's happening now with the Public Service Commission? The governor, who sounds very angry, he called it absurd, some of the responses we've seen. Now he's going to put the Public Service Commission, let's look at this and take real hard action if we have to. A lot of residents we speak to are sort of skeptical because they've heard similar language before. But the way the system and the process is set up now, the PSC comes in after the fact. Right. In other words, when there's a disaster, and then you heard the anger.
But here's my point. If viewers on Long Island know, LIPA basically had it yanked out from them after the last time. Right. And then, they went to PSE&G. They're serving it on the island. And by the way, guys, if you're in New Jersey and, you lost power and you finally got it back and you're a JCP&L, the same argument I'm talking about with Con Ed goes to these guys too. This is just, we're doing a case study here with Con Ed. But to me, to Andrew's point, okay, fine. The county executive in Westchester, George Latimer, sat in the same chair, and he's like, every word he can say on TV and get away with and go after Con Ed. And I'm with him. I spoke to Governor Murphy in New Jersey. He's going after him too. They're both new guys. They got sworn in January. But my point is, if a year from now this happens again, do they still get to yell at the utilities, or at what point are the officials who are supposed to be managing this, including Governor Cuomo, who said, we're going to do the blue ribbon commission here and get to the bottom of this, at what time does the buck stop with anybody, and when are we not surprised the utilities aren't going to get it right?
Well, I think, to Andrew's point, that is also the question you're raising now, is did the PSC do enough after Sandy? And are they allowed to do more now? Will the governor, whatever the process is, can there be more teeth in this? Can what happened in Long Island happen here?
Yep.
And from a preventative standpoint too, because it's like the most predictable disaster that you can possibly imagine. We keep talking about climate change. It's not will we get another? It's when. It's if. And they keep happening and they keep coming in more severity. Now, the fact that the utilities wouldn't be prepared for that. I find it. I'm at a loss for words because we're in 2018 and it feels like parts of the county are like Puerto Rico, and you're wondering how can they go this long without power?
And you're looking at trees. All of us, anyone at home can see this too. And I'm not, by any means trying to play like, I'm the right guy to solve this. But you look at tree lines before the storms hit that they say will have 50 to 60 mile per hour winds, and you say, well, that's going to take down the 12 hours later, I come back, the tree's over it. You can see this happening, the absence of coordination. But I will say there's one other thing that's driven me insane. It took us, and this might be inside baseball, but we go to Con Ed 4, 5 times. They won't give a flippant statement. And then finally, we literally send a crew to the lobby of their building in New York City. And only after threatening that if they didn't come and talk to our reporter that was downstairs, we were going to go live from basically their lobby or outside of it, saying they won't even answer the questions. Right. I get the guy on. This is after the CEO said we've made no mistakes, right? No and that, and I said, where's the contrition? I'll give you free PR advice here. When things are going south, right? Stop digging. They have shown a complete lack of empathy to their customers, and at least an absence of acknowledging that they could have and should have done better. And I don't get it. For the life of me, George, that's not a way to run a utility company.
Right, and we've heard this a lot now from elected officials. Now, to be fair, utility companies can't keep all these workers that they're now using on staff, right? There's a reason why the mutual aid system is in place. But there has to be, one would think, some sort of way to tinker with when that's activated and how that functions, because, you know, it takes a while to drive here from Wisconsin, you know, and.
But then don't tell people they're going to get their power back Wednesday.
Well, that's the thing. And then, of course, their site went down. I mean, as we all know,
Yeah.
the Con Ed site went down. We had a gentleman in Tarrytown who it was interesting. He's mentioned in our upcoming story, who actually filed sued Con Ed after Sandy. So his power goes out again after Riley. He says he went on the Con Ed website to see where the crews were working. He drove to Dobbs Ferry, and the crews weren't there. You know, so that was that disconnect that you were talking about, that lack of communication and informing the customers.
I know multiple people who've go online and they say their power has been restored and it hasn't. They call, they take it down, and they did it 3 times to them, telling everyone. That's why I question some of the numbers, the legitimacy as to how many households that lost power have had it restored. Because 3 times they had to correct to say, no, first of all, you've never even been on my block yet, and secondly, you haven't restored my power not once, not twice, but 3 times. It's just, that's the part of this. No one can control Mother Nature, I get it, but it just seems from so many people we've spoken to that they feel like they're being played.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I want to see Con Ed open up their books, because they raised rates 7% at the beginning of 2017, and that led them to make a $500 million in profit in the fourth quarter of 2017. Yeah, they spent $1 billion on post-Sandy stuff, but where's the money going? I mean, and why is the Public Service Commission granting them this rate hike if A, the customers aren't getting, you know, improved service out of the whole thing, and B, they're making money hand over fist?
And I'd be remiss, you have a big print edition coming out on Sunday, right, on this as well.
Right.
I mean, you're going to continue to cover it, obviously, but you have a big story on Sunday.
Right, we're doing ongoing coverage, of course, but the story we're coming out with on Sunday essentially looks at just what we're discussing, like how did this happen, why did this happen, and what's the system in place. A lot of folks don't know how the mutual aid system works, and that's where the problems lie. So our findings were that it's when that moment comes, when the call needs to be made, whether it's before the storm, or who does it? Does the state become more involved? Because what we hear all the time when this happens is, and there's obviously some truth to it. Utility companies will tell you it's worse than we expected. There's more trees down.
And that's why
than we
I
thought.
don't know why, in emergencies, if a state or even county, or if they have the capacity to declare emergencies, part of that should be mandating utility companies that they can't have the discretion to slow play it. They say you have to use all your things and you have to call right now for mutual aid. I have no problem that if it can be mutually agreed upon windows of time when an emergency is declared, that the option's taken out of the utility, so we don't have to worry about profit margin anymore. Maybe it can't, maybe it's going to take a while, but every single resource possible can be applied.
But that would have to be on a state level, right?
I
That would
think you're
be
right.
a state
I think
emergency
you're right.
because
but if
everything
the governor's
goes to
doing it, you know what? The governor especially, they don't get lifetime contracts here, the utilities. He or she should be able to have that stick. All right, I'm already over here, but hey, George, great job. Your report has been terrific, and I know Sunday, especially if you're in the Valley, definitely check out that edition. Coming up next, we've of course been covering the PCOCO corruption trial in Lower Manhattan, and it's just the latest case in our area with corruption convictions. They've been overturned or politicians have been acquitted. Another corruption trial in New York, and I still can't tell you what corruption is or bribery is under the new definitions after McDonald. We'll take a look at why it's so hard to convict public servants for corruption after this.